So will the Minister finally admit that officials have warned him that Israel is breaking international humanitarian law, or is his whole department refusing to accept the truth that Israel is committing war crime after war crime in Gaza?
When will the Minister understand the damage and the damning nature of this, that this is doing to the UK's international reputation, or rather what's left of it?
And I don't want him to tell us simply that the arms regime in the UK is the toughest in the world. I know that, but that is no reassurance at all to the over 1 million people who are facing famine in Gaza right now.
Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3 standout statements from today. Starvation is being used as a weapon of war. Israel is provoking famine, and the UK is still selling arms to Israel. When will the Secretary of State, when will the Minister understand the damage and the damning nature of this, that this is doing to the UK's international reputation, or rather what's left of it?
Yeah.
Well, we've been very clear that Israel has the right of self-defence, but that they must abide by international humanitarian law and the rules of war. And Britain is one of the leading nations in terms of finding ways to get aid into Gaza and helping our allies and other regional powers to do everything we can to get the hostages out. So I hope that he is proud of our country's intervention in both those 2 respects.
James Sunderland.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I welcome the recent news that the UK will be sending a UK aid field hospital to Gaza. Can I please ask the Minister what assurances have been sought and what assurances have been given in respect of sufficient force protection for all of the staff there, some of whom may be British?
Minister.
Well, we are acutely conscious, Mr. Speaker, about the way in which humanitarian workers, not just in Gaza but all around the world, unarmed, put themselves in harm's way for the sake of their fellow human beings. And he is right, a field hospital provided by UK aid, funding to Ahmed, arrived in Gaza from Manchester last Friday. This facility is staffed by UK and by local medics. They will be able to treat over 100 patients a day, and we are acutely conscious of the contribution that they are making, and we do everything we can to ensure that they are protected.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To any reasonable and informed observer, the conduct of the war in Gaza by Israel contravenes basic international humanitarian law in failing to distinguish between armed combatants and civilians, and using force beyond what is militarily necessary, offends against the prohibition of inflicting unnecessary injury, and is wholly disproportionate. Over 100,000 Palestinians have now been killed or injured by Israeli forces in Gaza since last October. So whilst the Minister relies on Israel being a democracy capable of abiding by its legal obligations, when the overwhelming evidence is that it is not doing so, what legal advice has he received about the complicity of and the dangers to our country of failing to take sufficient action under the relevant treaties to which this country is a signatory to deter such gross breaches of international humanitarian law?
Minister.
Well, as I said, Mr. Speaker, we do continue to assess Israel's commitment and capability to comply with international humanitarian law. Those assessments are supported by a detailed evidence base, conflict analysis, reporting from charities and NGOs, international bodies and partner countries, statements and reports by the Israeli government and their track record of compliance. And we take all of that into account in making the judgments we make. But I would point out to him that when it comes to targeting, when it comes to military action, the Israeli Defence Force has its own lawyers embedded in those units, and in much the same way of prudence that the British military do. That is not something which you see in any other force in the region, and it should give some confidence that they are seeking to abide by international humanitarian law.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I, in fact, welcome reports that Israel is opening new routes to directly deliver humanitarian aid into northern Gaza amidst a slowdown in UN operations and the widespread Hamas misappropriation of that aid that was referenced earlier. But significantly, at the same time that that is happening, every single day the IDF is documenting more and more Hamas infrastructure, weapons and missiles within civilian buildings, this week at Shifa Hospital and last month underneath UNRWA's own headquarters. Yeah. So isn't the reality, the grim reality, that so long as Hamas remains in control of Gaza, no matter how many times people cry for a ceasefire, there can be no peace?
Correct. Minister.
Well, it is absolutely clear, as my honourable friend set out, that there is no place for Hamas in any future for Gaza. What happened on October the 7th is uniquely appalling, and I agree with him that until Hamas is removed from Gaza, the opportunity of peace is very limited.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The UN Special Rapporteur has been crystal clear that arms sales to Israel for use in Gaza are unlawful, given the clear risk that they'll be used to violate international humanitarian law. Correct. And yet the government has consistently refused to disclose whether licences, for example, for F-35 fighter planes, have been reviewed, let alone amended. Will he take the opportunity to finally give Parliament a straight answer? I don't want to be told that reviews are possible. We know that. I want to know if those reviews have happened. I want to know if he's going to publish the details of those reviews. And I don't want him to tell us simply that the arms regime in the UK is the toughest in the world. I know that, but that is no reassurance at all to the over 1 million people who are facing famine in Gaza right now.
Minister.
Well, she asks me whether these matters, Mr. Speaker, are kept under review, and I can assure her that they are always kept under review. But equally, they are not decided at the whims of ministers standing at the dispatch box. They are decided through a detailed, proper, legally governed, code-governed process. And that, as always, is what the government is doing.
Zahar Sultana.
Mr. Speaker, as we debate this topic, children are starving to death in Gaza. Babies are so malnourished, UNICEF says that they do not have the energy to cry. Famine isn't just imminent, it is happening according to the head of Refugees International. And this isn't a natural disaster, it isn't accidental, it is intentional. Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war to collectively punish the Palestinian people. Israel blocks food from entering Gaza while bombing the people trapped inside. So will the minister finally admit that officials have warned him that Israel is breaking international humanitarian law, or is his whole department refusing to accept the truth that Israel is committing war crime after war crime in Gaza?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady uses florid language to describe these matters. But I hope that she will agree with me that the right thing to do is everything we possibly can to get the hostages out and support for the people she so eloquently described, support into Gaza, and that is what the government is seeking to do.
And this slaughter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Every month in Hammersmith we hold Ukrainian Open House to bring together all those supporting Ukrainian families who have fled that war. And every month I'm asked why there are not similar visa schemes to allow Palestinians to join their relatives in the UK or be hosted by families who wish to give them refuge here. Yes. What's the government's answer to that?
Well, the government's answer, Mr. Speaker, is that the two positions are not analogous and are very, very different. But he will know, he will indeed know, that we are doing everything we can to help individual cases in both instances, and we will continue to do so.
Amy Callaghan.
Mr. Speaker, Save the Children have reported 1.1 million people across Gaza are facing catastrophic food insecurity at the hands of Israel, with 1 in 3 children acutely malnourished. Does the Minister agree that Israel's tactic of starving the Palestinian people is a war crime?
As I've set out several times, Mr. Speaker, we are doing everything we can to make sure that the necessary food and resources get into Gaza, so that the point which Save the Children made in the evidence which she read out is addressed, and we will continue to do precisely that.
Sam Turry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that the UK supplies approximately 15% of the components using F-35 stealth bombers currently being deployed in Gaza. The very same bomber that's allegedly, in recent news, being deployed from RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. Now, earlier this month, Mr Speaker, a Dutch court ordered the country's government to block all exports of F-35 jets parts to Israel over concerns over being used to violate international law during the ongoing war in Gaza. So I want to know, Mr Speaker, whether the Minister will commit today to suspending its supply of F-35 components, and will he also confirm whether RAF bases are actually being used as a launch pad for bombing in Gaza, or indeed any supportive operations militarily of the IDF and Israeli military forces?
Well, I repeat, Mr Speaker, that these are decisions that are not made at the whim of a minister standing at the dispatch box. They are made in the normal way through a proper legal and coded practice, and the government will always operate on that basis in these situations.
Abdul Khan.
Mr Speaker, Canada, Australia, Sweden, the EU have now confirmed that they will restore the funding to UNRWA, refuting Israel's accusation that 450 members of the agency's staff had participated in the 7th October attack. With people dying from the imminent famine in Gaza, with Palestinians being killed trying to get flour to feed their families, the international community holds a degree of responsibility for failing to stop this. In light of the catastrophic situation in Gaza, will the Minister commit to restarting and increasing its funding to UNRWA as a matter of urgency?
Well, Mr Speaker, we have already increased funding significantly, including to UNRWA. He will know that Britain is not, at the moment, in a position of having to make that decision, because we have fully funded what we said we would do and are not due to provide any further money till the end of April. But the answer to his question, I hope, will be contained in the report, both from the Office of International Oversight Services, but also from the Katrin Colonna report, interim report, which we are expecting tomorrow. And I know that he, like me, will read it with great care in the hope that it shows a suitable way ahead, which we can all endorse.
Chris Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister try and help the House in understanding the government's position and who the government believes is directly responsible for blocking the aid going into Gaza? And can he also tell us what the government's direct response is to the comments of the UN General Secretary, who has said that this is the highest number of people facing catastrophic hunger ever recorded by the integrated food security system anywhere and at any time?
Minister.
Well, regardless of the accuracy of those final comments, there is no doubt at all, as I set out in my earlier responses, that the IPCC report says, and I quote again, famine is a very real scenario. And that is why we are trying to do everything we can to ensure that aid gets into Gaza by every possible means. I've explained to the House the difficulties of the air option and the maritime option, but those difficulties are not stopping us from pursuing those opportunities. But at the end of the day, it is by agreement with Israel getting more trucks in, by opening up more points of entry, by finding other ways of bringing aid in by road. We are pursuing all of those matters, and we will continue to do so.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The need for an arms embargo in Israel was laid out by the International Court of Justice in January